If there is a spiritual practice that has been mocked, lampooned, and stereotyped in the West, it's yoga. And why not? Western yogis are easy to make fun of. With our top knots, expensive leggings, chia seeds, smoothies, yoga mat bags over our shoulders, extended retreats, crystals, namasteing, oming, and sitting cross-legged everywhere, if you want to make fun of us, there's plenty of material to pick from. A couple of 100 years ago, yogis in India were also mocked and denigrated during the time of the British occupation and by the early travelers who had never seen anything like them before. Accounts as early as the one in 1689 by John Ovington described the painful and unnatural postures of the ash-smeared philosophical mendicants known as fakirs, a name for the Persian ascetics who were lumped into the same category as the Hindu yogis. The armed and highly organized ascetic order of the Naga sannyasis presented a violent challenge to the hegemony of the East India Company, and from the mid-1700s to the early 1800s, the Naga sannyasis and the Muslim fakirs staged uprisings and attacks against the East India Company in Bengal, which eventually led to big crackdowns on all ascetic organizations. The fact that Westerners lumped the Nagas, fakirs, and yogis of more gentle orders together into the same category of dangerous and violent ascetics is perhaps one reason that yoga fell out of vogue in India in the 1700s and 1800s. However, even if the yogis were considered to be dangerous, as well as filthy, lying scoundrels, and there are examples of this view even today, the practice and philosophical tenets of yoga somehow made it through this rocky period in India and found a resurgence with Sri Krishnamacharya, Swami Shivananda, and yoga's journey to the West in the late 1800s. As of 2014, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, an avid promoter and practitioner of yoga, at the helm of India, the birthplace of yoga has certainly begun to pull its own weight in yoga again. Modi's suggestion of an International Yoga Day to foster global harmony and inner and outer peace was sponsored by every country represented at the United Nations and has helped India reclaim its place of primacy in the world of yoga. Although some may say that India never lost touch with yoga, in the late 1980s I spent a lot of time traveling from North to South India looking for yoga teachers and found relatively few of them. In 1990, there were only 2 or 3 yoga schools in Mysore. At present, there are close to 50. Mysore is now considered to be one of the yoga capitals of India, and it is largely due to the influence of Pattabhi Jois. The yoga landscape in India has changed dramatically. Yoga arrived in America in the 1800s and has been largely assimilated into our culture. Though Americans studied yogic texts at the beginning, Ralph Waldo Emerson loved the Bhagavad Gita, few actually practiced yoga. However, in the short span of a little more than 200 years, millions upon millions of people across all walks of life have begun to practice yoga. In 2017, an estimated 36 million in the United States alone did some form of yoga. And not just by those who are on a spiritual path. It is practiced by children in schools, the elderly in chairs, people who are incarcerated, those who suffer from PTSD, patients in hospitals, and folks who just have a lot of stress in their lives. Yoga provides solace, free of discrimination. And yet, it's also important to acknowledge that in the United States, at present, we find ourselves in the midst of a very real clash of cultures. In the 1960s, we had East meets West in the hippie movement, as a generation of youth tried to free themselves from the shackles of wartime austerity and restrictive nuclear family ideals. As I have watched the yoga scene grow over the past 30 years, it's now more like West gobbles up the East, and the free-form embrace of spirituality has veered into a head-on collision with consumerism. Exactly the opposite of what yoga was supposed to promise and deliver. India, especially under Prime Minister Modi, has begun to reclaim yoga as part of its cultural heritage, which indeed it is.